I realized something was wrong the moment Cheryl from HR appeared at my office door speaking in that low, overly casual tone people use when they are trying to make something feel smaller than it is. She said I had forgotten to initial a new NDA. That alone didn't make sense, because I don't forget details like that. Not after 12 years of building systems where a single missed checkbox can cost millions. Still, I signed it without making a scene, handed it back, and returned to my screens. But something in my chest had already tightened like a warning I couldn't quite translate yet. At the time, I was deep into the final compliance structure for a $300 million merger. The kind executives loved to talk about in town halls, even though most of them couldn't explain how it actually worked. I wasn't one of the loud ones. I didn't sit in brainstorming circles or argue about company culture. I was the person who made sure everything actually functioned. The one who built the quiet, invisible connections between systems that were never meant to talk to each other. The one who got called at 2 in the morning when something broke and fixed it before anyone else even knew it had failed. My desk that morning looked like it always did during crunch time. 3 monitors glowing with different layers of code and compliance logs. 2 cups of coffee already gone cold, and a sticky note reminding me to double-check a specific clause in the merger documentation. Around me, the office buzzed with its usual mix of noise and ego. People laughed too loudly, argued about things that didn't matter, and walked around like they were the reason the company existed. I sat in my corner, quiet, focused, doing the work that actually kept everything standing. My name was on the federal documents tied to the merger, not as a formality but as a requirement. I was the certified third-party liaison, the neutral authority responsible for verifying that everything met compliance standards. It wasn't a role anyone else wanted. The training alone had taken months, and it came with responsibility that most people avoided. But I took it because I understood something they didn't. If you control the structure, you control the outcome, even if no one notices you. I liked being unnoticed. There was a kind of freedom in it. While everyone else chased recognition, I built systems that didn't need applause. Systems that worked quietly in the background, holding everything together while others took credit for the surface. But that kind of invisibility comes with a cost. People forget what you do, they assume you are replaceable. That assumption is where they made their mistake. Later that morning, when I logged into the clearance system to finalize my sign-off, I hesitated. It wasn't a clear thought, just a feeling that something wasn't aligned. I opened a separate folder I kept for contingencies and reviewed a clause I had flagged months earlier. I didn't create backup plans because I was paranoid. I created them because I had seen how quickly organizations turned on the very people they depended on when something went wrong, and I had no intention of being caught unprepared when that moment came. The email arrived at 9:13 a.m. sharp. Mandatory all-hands meeting at 10. No explanation. Just the usual corporate phrasing that hinted at change without saying anything directly. By then, I already knew what it meant. I had seen enough of these meetings to recognize the pattern. New leadership, new direction. And usually, a quiet reshuffling of people they considered unnecessary. The new executive introduced himself with confidence that felt rehearsed. He spoke about transformation, about cutting away inefficiencies, about modernizing the company. Words like that sound impressive in a presentation, but they often translate into something much simpler. Removing people who understand the system and replacing them with people who only understand the idea of it. I listened, but I didn't react. I had learned a long time ago that the loudest voices in a room are rarely the ones who understand the consequences of their decisions. 3 hours later, Cheryl came back. This time she wasn't alone. They led me into a small room, sat me down, and slid an envelope across the table. The language inside was predictable. My role no longer aligned with the company's strategic direction. They needed to move forward without me. It was framed as a necessary step, a business decision, something impersonal. But nothing about it felt impersonal when I saw my own photo at the front desk marked with instructions not to let me return. That was the moment everything shifted. I didn't argue, I didn't raise my voice. I packed my things quietly, handed over my badge, and walked out like it was just another day. But once I reached my car, I unlocked my phone and accessed a secure system most people in that building didn't even know existed. Then I removed a single key, not a file, not a password, a verification key tied directly to my clearance as the third-party liaison for the merger. Without it, the system couldn't validate the final compliance steps required to complete the deal. I didn't feel anger when I did it. I didn't feel satisfaction either. It was simply a necessary adjustment, They had removed the one component that made the system functional. I was just allowing the system to reflect that reality. When I got home, the silence felt unfamiliar. No notifications, no urgent messages, no constant demands for my time. Just stillness. For the first time in years, nothing needed me. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out a file I had prepared long before that day. Inside it was the original merger protocol, including the clause I had reviewed earlier. It stated clearly that if the designated liaison was removed without proper replacement and certification, the entire compliance structure became invalid. In simpler terms, without me, the merger couldn't legally proceed. I sat there for a long time, reading it again, not because I needed to understand it, but because I needed to fully accept what it meant. They hadn't just fired an employee, they had dismantled their own deal. The next morning, I made a call. I informed the other company's compliance officer that I was no longer employed and therefore unable to complete the final sign-off. The reaction on the other end of the line shifted from confusion to concern within seconds. They understood immediately what my former company had failed to recognize. Within hours, everything stopped. The merger was paused, accounts were frozen. Legal teams were pulled into emergency meetings. And for the first time since I had left that building, my phone started ringing again. I didn't answer. They tried to frame it as a minor issue at first, something that could be resolved internally. But as the reality of the situation spread through the company, the tone changed. Panic replaced confidence, blame replaced strategy. By the end of the week, the deal was effectively dead. Offers came in quickly after that. Higher salary, better title, promises of respect and authority. But they all missed the point. They still thought this was about a job. It wasn't. I had already moved on. I registered my own company, structured my services as a vendor rather than an employee, and set my own terms. If they wanted access to the systems I had built, they could have it. But not for free and not on their terms. The final outcome came quietly, no dramatic announcement, no public spectacle. Just a short statement confirming that the merger had been terminated due to compliance issues. And just like that, everything they had worked toward disappeared. A few days later, I received a small package. Inside was a simple note acknowledging what had happened. No requests, no negotiations, just recognition. That meant more than any offer they had made. Now I work from a space that feels entirely my own. No unnecessary noise, no empty meetings, no one questioning the value of what I do. The systems I build still operate in the background, still holding things together. I didn't destroy anything. On my terms. I simply stopped holding it up.